I'm Deli Carew, and I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles at Netflix. But first I wanted to say I'm so excited to be here. I've told everyone I know that I'm coming back to Carolina, and I'm coming back to be at the Morehead Finals weekend, so I'm very excited, especially on the day of the Carolina Duke game, which is great. And it feels good. It feels like coming back home to Carolina and just to the Morehead. It just feels really like a warm, inviting place, and I feel very good to be here. So I'm happy to be here with all of you. So a little bit about me. So I work in Los Angeles. I'm a lawyer at Netflix. I work in the Legal and Business Affairs group for the original series. So I graduated here in '99 and then went to Harvard Law School. Then I clerked in Alaska for a year at the Supreme Court, and then worked at law firms in DC and then in Los Angeles, and then went in-house to NBC for 8 years, and then went to Netflix about 2 years ago. So for me, I didn't necessarily start out thinking I would end up as an entertainment lawyer, but the path is taking me kind of where I think I was meant to be at. So it's really been great walking around. I want to tell a little story. I was walking around campus, and I was walking in the pit, and there's all those kind of student groups, soliciting students to be part of their organization. So when I was here, I was a dancer, and I danced in UNC Modern Extension, which is a big modern dance company here, and I was a choreographer there. But when I was here, I also started a company called Blank Canvas. So this was started in '98, so a long time ago. It was basically for students of all levels to be able to dance and to express themselves in different ways without having kind of rigorous auditions. So I was walking around, and I knew it kind of still existed, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll see Blank Canvas. And there they were. There was a table with Blank Canvas Dance Company, and I walked up, and I'm like, it was really awkward. I walked up, and I was like, I actually started this. It was so strange. And they were like, really? So you just never know the difference you're going to make. And when I was here, that need existed, and I think as a Morehead and being a Carolina grad, being a Carolina student and as a Morehead, if something isn't here, you create it, and it actually may still last, almost 20 years later. So you never know the difference you're going to make and the legacy that you could leave. So that's it.
Awesome, thanks. Hey, I'm Thompson Payne. I live in San Francisco, work in education software out there. So first, congratulations on being here. You've earned being here. It's a huge accomplishment. I remember I was so daunted being in your shoes. I actually finished the finals weekend. I went back to school the following day. I went to my high school principal's office, and I just told him I didn't get the scholarship. I really appreciated him nominating me, though, and everything he'd done for me, I really appreciate it, but I didn't get it. And he said, how do you know? And I said, well, I was the least impressive person in the group. There's no way I got it, but thanks anyways. He said, well, let's just wait and see what happens. So here I am 18 years later. You're supposed to be here. Congratulations. I needed to hear that my finals weekend, so I want you to hear it. So my career has kind of been the story of kind of left turns that didn't make sense to people who didn't know me well, but made sense to me. I got here interested in a number of things, kind of public policy, international affairs, maybe journalism. I did a summer experience with International Public Service, taught English in China, caught the China bug, ended up coming back sophomore year of college, switching my major to Asian studies. My parents were baffled, some of my friends were, but it made sense to me. I was passionate about it, I did it. Senior year of college, took the LSAT, was all set to go to law school. Senior spring, ended up pulling my applications and decided to move to China without a job. Decided I was just going to go learn Chinese, get to know the country, and I'd figure it out. Ended up kind of developing a career in foreign policy over in China. Was kind of on that path, and said, you know what? I actually want to shift back to the U.S. I think I want to do a career in U.S. domestic policy. So pulled the plug on that, went back to grad school, and then was all teed up to do that, and then kind of did another left turn, and moved into the tech world and went into business. And so I think what I would say is it didn't make sense to people who knew me well, but I think it always made sense to me, and I think that my experience here at Carolina and with the Morehead program specifically, Morehead-Cain program, really teed me up to have confidence that those decisions would work out. And I think that, the program here really gave me, I feel like gives you the resources to find what you're passionate about, go explore what you're passionate about, and really give you the confidence to go after it. Make it your career pursuit, not just something that you kind of take a class on. And that's not, that's the Morehead program for sure, but it's also Carolina. The Morehead-Cain program gave me the summer experience, which introduced me to China, and that completely changed the trajectory of my career and my life, hands down. And then once I decided to go pursue this China career interest, the Carolina academic opportunities, the extracurricular opportunities, the study abroad opportunities, just opened that world up to me amazingly well. And then the Morehead-Cain community, I think, is what really, I can't emphasize enough, just when you're surrounded by peers and alumni who aren't just optimizing for success, but who are going after what they really care about, and it seems to be working out for them. It really gives you so much confidence that if you go after what you're passionate about and what you're really excited about, even if it's not kind of what your parents think you're supposed to do, or what your school thinks you're supposed to do, that it will work out, and that they're on the other end of those decisions that seems to have worked out. That's really meant a lot to me, and I think it's one of the powerful things of this program, and has really had an impact on my life and my career. So that's what I'm really grateful for.
Hey guys, my name is Larry Braithwaite. I'm a senior vice president at ASB Real Estate Investments. So we're a commercial real estate investor. I'm based in Washington, D.C. And it's so great to be back. I think it was Sally Krawcheck who said that the Morehead-Cain was not a difference, it was the difference. And I certainly echo those sentiments, and you'll understand a little bit more why. So I came to Carolina with an interest in community development. Originally from Queens, New York, and had seen so many kids that had great potential, but I was afforded an opportunity that gave me a Morehead scholarship, and a lot of kids didn't have that opportunity. And so came with an interest in urban development, and spent some time with a mentor in the business school that helped me understand that there was a burgeoning intersection between business and social issues. And that was when the double bottom line, I'm sort of aging myself, now it's the triple bottom line. But that was when the double bottom line, doing good and doing well, sort of became a concept that people began to pursue. And really through the Morehead-Cain, I was able to pursue an interest in that double bottom line, and also just with Carolina. So had a number of really special experiences that some of which were part of my Morehead, some of which were not. I spent some time at Princeton in their Junior Summer Institute, which actually sort of pushed my Morehead summer experience back a little bit. I did a policy semester through the public policy program with a consultancy in Washington, D.C. that helps nonprofits form earned income and for-profit subsidiaries to really support their mission. And then with the Morehead-Cain, ended up doing sort of an internship with Self-Help, which is a nonprofit community bank based in Durham, and sort of layered that in with some microfinance work and spent some time in Peru as well. And so, because of the Princeton experience, my timing was sort of messed up, and I realized that I wanted to get into investment banking because that was sort of where a lot of people who had the greatest impact sort of first got their chops. And as you guys might know, the investment banking crowd is very rigorous in terms of the schedule. And so I came back to New York, and I was prepared to sort of wait a year to get sort of back on track from a scheduling perspective. It was July, maybe August. And all of the interviews happened the fall before. And so I did what any Morehead scholar would do when they were sort of frazzled. I called Chuck and I said, Chuck, I want to be an investment banker. And Chuck gave me a list of 5 names. And so I'm like, okay, I'll reach out. And literally I send an email and my phone rings like 5 minutes later. And Jim Wilmot, who you might remember, Morgan Stanley. He said, got your email, what are you up to? Another Morehead-Cain alum. And I said, well, nothing. I'm home hanging out. He said, why don't you come in? 2 weeks later, I had a job as an analyst at Morgan Stanley, and got my finance experience. That was 3 years. And then really sort of began to think more about moving back into that community development space, and that double bottom line, and did what any Morehead-Cain scholar would do at that crossroad. I called Chuck and I said, Chuck, I'm really interested in commercial real estate. This is sort of the next step. It's a great sort of way to build on my finance experience. And Chuck gave me a name, Gay Shackelford, who I reached out to, and Gay was very helpful, and she connected me with people in the industry. And one woman that she connected me with, that I had an informational with, called me back because her firm was hiring, and I got a job with her firm. And so 2 for 2 there. And started at ASB Real Estate Investments in 2006 as an analyst. And after a couple of years there, really started to sort of think about, almost an insurance policy, almost the training, realized that I wanted to get my MBA. So I did what any Morehead scholar would do at a crossroad. I said, Chuck, I want to get my MBA. Chuck wrote me a fantastic recommendation. I got into Harvard, did my MBA there between 2009 and 2011. And the rest is history. And so, when I think about my life, both of the jobs, because I sort of came back to my previous firm, were sourced through the Morehead-Cain. The Morehead-Cain was instrumental in my business school, not only the applications, but also in distinguishing myself, because it was no surprise to me that the other Carolina folks that I was in Harvard with were Morehead scholars, some of which I went to school with. So I'm incredibly grateful, and it has been the gift that has kept on giving. And want to echo statements made earlier, just in terms of the importance of graduating with a clean balance sheet. As a finance person, I appreciate that more today than maybe I did when I was your age. So I'm happy to be here and happy to give you honest advice that you may seek.
Hi there, my name's Ed Perkins. I'm a British Morehead-Cain scholar from the class of 2009. I just want to say a massive well done, and I really mean that because it's a hard place to be sitting in the seats you're sitting in now, and just to get where you are now is an extraordinary achievement. So I really hope you enjoy the next few days. Try and relax as much as you can. We've all sat there quite a few years ago now. But really enjoy it and make friends and understand the opportunities that these next few days put forward for you guys. So I'm a documentary filmmaker. I direct documentaries around the world, and I get to travel all over the place and tell stories, or try to tell stories about interesting people and places and cultures. And I've been doing this for about 8-9 years now, and I love it. I genuinely feel incredibly passionate about what I do. I feel very privileged to do what I do, and it's a job that constantly surprises me. Even after almost a decade, there are a couple of times every year where I literally kind of pinch myself, and I'll be looking through my camera lens at an event, and I just can't quite believe what I'm witnessing or what I'm part of. And I sort of think to myself, what the hell? Like, how have you found yourself in this position, whether it's filming a protest in Myanmar, or filming a serial killer on death row in Ohio, or filming Tina Turner, as I did the other day in Memphis, or gangsters, or bare-knuckle fighters, or treasure hunters. And the sort of diversity that the job provides for me is really exhilarating. It's all the more remarkable because when I was sitting in your shoes 13 years ago, I had all the excitement and the nerves that you felt, but I also sincerely had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do for a career. And if someone had given the 19-year-old version of me sitting in those seats a blank bit of paper and had asked me to write 30 or 40 or 50 careers that I might have sort of seen myself going into, filmmaking would have been on that list at all. I was a maths and a physics Olympiad when I was at high school. I thought I would become a lawyer, maybe go into politics. I never showed any interest in art or theatre. I couldn't draw to save my life, and I've ended up directing films. And that's kind of an astounding journey, and one that I'm really proud of. And my perspective at some point really shifted, and it shifted in huge part because I became a Morehead-Cain scholar, and through that I became a student at UNC Chapel Hill for 4 years. And in preparing for today, I was kind of thinking back was there a kind of Damascene moment when I was sitting in a classroom with a very inspiring professor and it suddenly dawned on me that I actually wanted to become a filmmaker? And the truth was that never kind of happened. But what I do remember vividly is that a couple of years after arriving here, I remember sitting on the pit and realizing that I'd taken classes for the first time in my life in subject matter that I had never ever learnt about before, whether it's Greek mythology or Italian or religion in America or modern contemporary politics. And what I was finding was that I was becoming totally intoxicated and addicted to the real breadth of subject matter that I was studying. And it was amazing to me that I could kind of be in ancient Rome in one class, I could walk across the road and suddenly be in modern America learning about the intersection of religion and politics here. And I decided to try to find a career path that would allow myself to keep going, to keep kind of dipping my toe into a whole range of subject matters and allow myself to keep traveling and keep being inquisitive about the world. I think there were kind of three key moments, I think, over the sort of 4 years that I was here that I'd like to kind of pass on. And the first was that in my second year here, I decided to do a study abroad. And slightly counterintuitively, I decided to go back to Europe. I'm from London originally, but I did a study abroad back to Florence in Italy. And I drank some very good wine, which was lovely. And I learned a lot about photography and history of art. And that fundamentally changed my perspective. I suddenly went from someone who was only interested in becoming a lawyer to someone who suddenly realized that there was this world of art and culture out there that I was interested in. The second was that in my second summer here, I decided to go off to India. And back then, what you would do, you would choose somewhere you wanted to travel, and at the end of that summer, you would write a review, a paper that kind of summarized your experiences. And I was starting to take classes in film and getting into it, and I remember going to Chuck and Megan and saying, I know this isn't the done thing, I know everyone writes these papers, but is there any chance that you would allow me, as someone who's showing a bit of an interest in film, instead of writing a paper, to go out and make you a documentary for the summer? And I think this shows the real unbelievable support network that exists in the foundation here. They said, absolutely. And I came back and I remember there was a camera there waiting for me to take with me, and there was a brand spanking iMac downstairs with Final Cut Pro on, ready for me to edit on. It was astounding. And then in my very final summer, I did an internship. And again, through the Morehead-Cain Foundation, I was set up with an internship at National Geographic. And my mentor there was an amazing alum called Kim Woodard, who was also at Morehead-Cain. And off the back of that, I was offered a job a year later. I, like all four of us, are deeply indebted to this place, the Morehead, but also the experience of 4 years as a Carolina student. It's an incredible place. And I feel really excited to see you guys all here at a moment in your lives which is really important, but also totally liberating. This is the first time in your lives where you're able to make really big decisions for yourself. And if you become a Morehead-Cain scholar and you want to go off to China, you can do that, and that's amazing. And if, like me, you never want to go near a maths equation ever again, you can avoid every maths class for 4 years and go and study film. So I feel really excited for you guys, and I hope that you have a great few days. And I'm sure we're going to hopefully open up the panel now, open up the floor to some questions.
Is this my phone? Yes, it is. Okay. Yes, so what we're going to do now is open it for your questions. I'm actually going to hand this over because I think you all can then probably juggle around a little bit better there. Who has a question for someone on the panel?
Should I stand or?
You can, or just use your outdoor voice. I think you'll be all right with that standing. Yes.
So first I'd like to say thank you so much for coming here and speaking to all of us on behalf of everyone I know. We all really appreciate it. My question is directed towards Mr. Braithwaite, actually. So
Larry, please. Please,
Larry,
Larry, yes.
As someone who wants to work in international aid, I was wondering on what your opinions are with on a micro level, micro consignment and microfinancing, and on a larger scale, foreign direct investment in developing countries now, and how people are comparing this to economic imperialism, and how you think investments can work to help underserved communities without getting big governments or private entities too involved in these places and kind of diluting their culture.
Yeah, I mean, that's a... Did I mention that I had a PhD in international? No. I'll answer the question that I sort of felt from that. And, you know, I think I took a class in business school called Doing Business in Emerging Economies. And, being someone who's interested in the double bottom line and, doing business with people that potentially could be perceived as, disenfranchised, it's delicate, right? Because it's easy to be perceived as a predator, even if there is a gain to trade, right? And so what I would say is, and I think it's just an easy sort of framework, is the work that you're doing enriching the lives of people that you're doing business with? And I think that the reality is that a lot of disenfranchised folks have fewer options, right? And so, it's tough to sort of say, well, I'm giving them an option. It's not a mainstream option, but it is an option. And, you're going to have to navigate the sort of moral implications of some of those decisions, because it is tough. Do you give more expensive credit to a community that doesn't have credit? Or do you just not engage in that business at all? That's a very tough question. And, you're going to have to apply your own moral compass, and that'll be evaluated. I'm kidding. It really is your own lens, right? And I would say just, what I would urge you to do is to bring a sense of empathy and to think about it from the perspective of your counterparty. And if you feel good about the work that you're doing, to the extent that if you weren't doing it, they would not be as well off, then go with that. Because there's always going to be someone that challenges the work that you're doing, especially if your populations are sensitive. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right, so I would like to first have our other two panelists who have arrived. They did not let a bomb cyclone stop them. All right, they got here. Quickly, do you mind just a snapshot of sort of just whoosh in, say who you are real quick, and then we'll pass on to Camilo, and we'll get back to your questions.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Olivia. I'm a graduate of 2011, and then shortly thereafter from the medical school of 2015, also here. So spent a beautiful 8 years in Chapel Hill. Loved every second of it, and happy to answer any questions in that realm. Right now, fresh off the plane from LaGuardia, I'm at Columbia University Medical Center studying obstetrics and gynecology, and almost finished my training. So absolutely excited to be here, so excited to continue to talk to you all about kind of what brought me to where I am now, and that is largely due to where I was sitting a couple of years ago.
Larry, would you hand that mic down?
Oh.
I gotta share, Larry. My name is Camilo Duran, class of 2004. Studied Latin American Studies, Political Science while at Carolina. Today I work in international soccer, so I work for Major League Soccer. I represent the commercial TV interests of the men's and women's national teams here in the US, the Mexican national team, and a handful of other global competitions. Carolina was amazing, and the Morehead experience was amazing. I'm originally from Colombia. I grew up in Montreal. I attended a boarding school in New England, and the Carolina experience absolutely defined my career, me as a professional, and provided the diversity of experiences, both academically, outside of the classroom, athletically, that ultimately I think inspired me to pursue the career that I am in today.
Awesome. Great. So, questions again.
So I have two questions, one for Thompson and one for Ed. So I'll start with Thompson. What was it about China that made you just change your whole major and career?
Great question. Son, can you hear me?
Yes.
So again, I'd had an interest in international affairs before I went, but I think, and this was 2002 for some context. So China had just got into the WTO. It was just kind of entering that period where the New York Times is starting to cover China every other day. So if you were following world affairs, it was pretty clear that China was on the rise. So I think it was, as someone who wanted to have an international career, it was clear that if I invested in China, I learned Chinese, and I made this country a focus, that it probably wasn't going to do me wrong, whether I went into business, law, international politics, diplomacy, you name it. I think the other thing that I just constantly found fascinating about China is that a country that big with, what, a fifth of the world's population that was changing so rapidly at such scale. Just when I was working over there, so I was in the State Department, and I was a political analyst. So my job every day was to wake up and basically write something interesting about what was happening in China and send it back as a cable to DC. And so, you had to go in and just analyze what was going on there and kind of wrap your mind around it and put a succinct thesis around it and send it back. And that was so stimulating to me. And I couldn't think of a country that was harder to wrap your mind around and kind of come up with a succinct thesis on that was informative and insightful for China watchers back in DC. And I love that.
So Ed, I absolutely love documentaries, watching them, reading about them. And I've always really wanted to make a documentary, but the thing that I hesitate with is that I know nothing about film or editing. So I just wanted to ask you, what was that transition like from, being more STEM-minded and wanting to be a lawyer to becoming a director?
It was a scary transition, actually. I think I felt 13 years ago when I was sitting in your seat that to some extent I had a path that was that I was supposed to follow. It may have been a certain amount of pressure from my parents to be a lawyer. It may have been some pressure from my high school to follow a set path. But I knew that in part coming to America for university and hopefully becoming a Morehead-Cain Scholar was the first step in me saying, actually, no, I'm going to take control of my own life and make decisions that I want to make. But moving away from the subject matter that I felt really comfortable in and starting to do something creative, it was scary. I remember taking some communication studies classes here and being really blown away. I remember taking one class and watching a behind-the-scenes documentary. So you watch the film of how the big Hollywood movies made. I remember watching and just thinking, this is so cool. There's adults, real adults, basically playing in the woods with cameras, and they're getting paid for it and they're making a living out of it. And it blew my mind that these guys were able to do something really creative and fun. So yeah, I started taking classes. I borrowed a camera. The communication studies guys here have amazing resources, and there were all these cameras for students to use, but no one would ever borrow them. So there were always cameras to borrow, always cameras free, and I just started making stuff. And that's the beauty of especially being at university, you can make stuff without the pressure of judgment. If I look back at the stuff I made when I was here, it's terrible. I mean, literally boy band music videos with my friends on the rugby team. It was pretty horrific, but I made the mistakes I needed to before becoming a professional. So my encouragement, my words of encouragement would be just go and do it. Just go and have fun with it. Get a camera, start filming, and you'd be very surprised how quickly you start to pick up the skills. And show it to friends, show it to family. Don't worry about how it turns out. Even now, I've been doing this for 10 years, I look back at the last project I did and think it was awful. And the whole point is that you're constantly learning, constantly challenging yourself, and surrounding yourself with people who can help you on that journey.
All of you guys have varying degrees of separation from UNC in your time here as an undergraduate, but I'm just curious of what kinds of extracurricular activities did you participate in during your time at UNC that were really meaningful to you guys? Is that for everyone?
Sure. So I, starting at UNC, I had medicine kind of in the back of my mind, but I absolutely was not sure. And one of the major things that I wanted to get out of a college education was a true liberal arts education where I also could just pursue anything that I wanted extracurricularly. I really had an interest in Spanish, but I also had this kind of weird obsession with performing arts and theater. And that was something that was so cool that at a place like this where you could be pre-med and major in whatever you wanted to major in, and then also be super involved in musical theater at the end of every day. That was pretty cool. So that was definitely something that I enjoyed, and then I think shaped ultimately where I chose to be in the US, which is New York City.
for me, I think the two that stand out is, as a first-generation immigrant to the U.S., I think there was a thriving Hispanic community just down the street in Carrboro, so I worked in the Big Brother, Little Brother program and mentored a young boy who had arrived to the U.S. about 2 years ago, or 2 years at that time. So it was an opportunity for me to give back and share the experiences that I had. And I think the other one was athletics here. I ran track and field, and I think in high school I always pushed myself, and I think it was a much different atmosphere, but the environment, the professional environment here, and the ability to train with world-class athletes, I think mentally and physically just pushed me to another level, which I think is something that I take with me in different things that I do in terms of mental toughness.
I'll go. I mean, I talked about, I did dance here, so I've danced in the modern dance company here and then started a dance company. And I want to say, you can be a lawyer and also be involved in creative things. Lawyers, okay, you can still, kind of foster your creative interests and still be a lawyer.
I second that. I'm also a lawyer. It's good practice, so cheers to that. I was involved with the Carolina Union Activities Board, and I was chair of the forum committee, so we brought speakers to campus and did kind of discussion forums. And this was 2003 to 5, and we covered a range of topics. One of the things we chose to focus a lot on was war. This is right after the Iraq invasion. Sounds like it's crazy we're actually still there this far on, but we brought veterans in who were on campus to talk about it. We brought in war journalists. We did something called Faces of the Fallen, where we actually took over the art gallery for a month and just posted a picture and biography of everyone who had fallen in the war to date, just trying to drive discussion around kind of what was going on there. That was a big part of my extracurriculars there. Really just a great way to get involved in campus discussion and meet a lot of people across campus.
So I joined a fraternity, Alpha Bi Alpha. It was a great experience. We actually did quite a bit of service-oriented experience. There was a pretty robust program, in addition to the social piece, which was great. And then I also played rugby, UNC Rugby Football Club. And I would say between both of those networks, are really where the critical mass of the relationships that are strongest today exist. I'm going to watch the game with a fraternity brother later today, and I had some rugby guys over to the house literally last week. So those are the experiences that I sort of think about most fondly and that are most lasting.
I should just qualify what I said about lawyers. I actually love lawyers. I apologise immensely. It just wasn't quite for me. I don't think I was smart enough to be a lawyer. So I was on the rugby team as well. So Chuck and Megan and the whole foundation, they are unbelievably supportive of every decision or crazy idea you have. I think probably deciding to join the rugby team stretched them to the max. When I was here, anyway, it didn't have the greatest reputation. But I will say this, it gave me some of my best friends in the world, and I would really encourage you guys, whether it's sports or any of the other myriad sort of opportunities and societies on campus, do learn about them, do reach out to them, do try them when hopefully you start here in the fall. Most of my closest friends still today are friends from the sports team I played on here. We've been ushers at each other's weddings. We still see each other all the time in London. And those bonds are lasting and are sincere and are very, very important.
All right, other questions in the back? Yes, back brother? Yes, you. Yes.
This is for any member of the panel, but what's your next left turn?
It wouldn't be a left turn if I told you, would it? It's a great question. I don't know. So the company I work for now, it's called Quizlet. I don't know if any of you have used it.
I didn't know. It's a household name. It's a big deal.
So Quizlet's doing well right now. So I'm really enjoying it. We're doing great. I'm Don't know if I'm in San Francisco for the rest of my life. TBD, sorry. I wish I had a better answer. I would say, yeah, wish I had a better answer, sorry. It's coming though. Anyone else? Next left turn.
It's hard to predict.
All right. We'll take another guess.
I have two quick questions. The first one for Ed is, what is the craziest thing you've ever shown?
That's a good question.
I got stuck in a sort of riot protest in Myanmar that got a bit weird. The weirdest thing was when I was young, I was obsessed with WWE, WWF wrestling. I was absolutely obsessed with it. So when I started working for National Geographic, I pitched to try and make a show about the sort of rung down from WWE, those who had either like been to the top and were falling, like very with little grace, or people who were on the way up. And it was amazing. So I went around America to these little sports halls all over the place and spent time with aspiring wrestlers. It was a real childhood dream of mine. Ticked off. I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but yeah, that was kind of amazing.
And then Ed, or my bad, sorry, Camilo, how do you think that the U.S. men's national team's failure to qualify for the World Cup is going to affect marketing MLS and the national team within the domestic market?
I mean, there's the answer I give the media, and there's the answer I give you. I mean, the reality is, you know, it hurts. It's a lot better world for soccer in the United States when the men's national team qualifies. But I think in the wake of it, there's been a lot of debate. There's been a lot of soul searching. There's been a lot of thinking. There was a very visible U.S. soccer presidential election in the last couple of months, and the reality is people in this country really care, and that's a good thing. So. The nice thing is we've got the women's national team that are world champions. They're kind of spinning and preparing for World Cup qualifying. They'll play in the World Cup in France in 2019. So, and I think Major League Soccer and all the infrastructure and everything that we've built is at an all-time high. And it doesn't necessarily need a men's World Cup to continue growing. I mean, it's on a rocket ship now. So while the stimulus package would have been great, there's so much going on in the sport right now that makes us feel confident that it's going to continue to project in the right way.
Hi, my name is Catherine Carlo, and I have a question for Olivia. So, I was wondering how you chose your specialty, like to be an OBGYN, and how you aim to apply it to serve global women's health.
Well, I think my first real, outside of kind of volunteering and shadowing, which I did a good bit in undergrad, and even a little bit before, the first experience I truly had, like jumping both feet into medicine, was one of the summers through the Morehead-Cain, where I went and worked in a sexual health clinic in Malawi, doing HIV research and kind of helping in any way that we could there. And that was my first taste really of medicine, and obviously was 99% women's health focus. So when I ultimately decided to go into medicine, I entered knowing that that was just fascinating to me, and I was excited about whatever else I was going to learn about in terms of other specialties. And it was funny because when I came into medical school, everyone said, oh, you know, you have your first idea, but you'll change your mind, you'll change your mind. And the entire time I was like, I don't think I'm going to change my mind. As soon as I started with medical school, the cool thing about the Morehead, as a slight tangent, is it just creates in you the desire to be like, okay, well, like, what else can I do then, even beyond college? You kind of ask the question every time you start a new job or you start at school, you have that kind of push to take that extra step to be like, okay, well, what if I want to do that? Like, I'm going to go get that, so how can I get there? And that's such a cool thing that's able to be fostered when you're, 18, 19, 20, which is neat. So starting out in medical school, that was something that I was like, okay, well, how can I get, boots on the ground to do something related to women's health and global health? So I joined a group and kind of helped it grow. It's called the Honduran Health Alliance, and we went down every summer in med school and set up women's health clinics, like in the middle of nowhere, and did a lot of kind of joint work with the School of Public Health, and did a ton of actual like running clinics and holding education seminars, and I feel like in a lot of ways you are, and global health is very trendy right now. It's very, it's something that everyone kind of wants to get involved in, and I think there were parts of global health that I saw that maybe weren't the most beneficial to the people who we were trying to help. And in that case, with that Hunger and Health Alliance program, like that is, to me, one of the pictures of sustainability with regard to a global health intervention that will eventually, hopefully, render itself obsolete. And so that was a huge thing that influenced me absolutely wanting to kind of always continue with women's health specifically, and then to figure out how I can best marry that with global health, which in these days with women's issues kind of being at the forefront of many types of discussion, whether nationally or internationally, that's a good thing. But right now, up in where I currently am, probably 80% of my clinic population of the people that I work with are from the Latino population, and in my world, that is now global health for me, even though it's not somewhere that I have to take a plane to, and I think that is a really cool thing as well. So it's definitely created in me the desire to always work with that population, or with a population of a similar makeup who's underserved and not really spoken for on a wider platform, and that's what I'm trying to do.
So this is for anyone or everyone on the panel. While you were kind of traveling the unconventional path throughout undergrad and postgrad, and you encountered any form of doubt in yourself, what kept you guys going forward, or in being willing to not, I don't know, follow the convention?
I think I'll jump and I'll pass it down. I think one of these cool things, and you're sitting next to the reasons. I mean, to be able to kind of look across the table at lunch, or like come home at the end of the day to your roommate and just be like, oh my God, I don't know if I have it in me to keep going. It's amazing to be at a place as wonderful and as in many ways as relaxed and happy as this, and also be able to look across at the people that surround you and just be blown away by them. It is encouraging. I guess I found it encouraging, the people that surrounded me who were my peers, just to hear what they were excited about and hear what they were doing, and to watch them look forward and jump towards whatever their goals were. It seemed impossible not to try and do the same. Not that it wasn't overwhelming at times, but I think this program has such a magical way of finding people who are excited about whatever it might be, like whatever that X factor is, and even if you don't know what it is, there's some weird push to keep looking for it. And I think that kind of the camaraderie of the people around you, it almost kind of makes that role even bigger and larger and further, if that makes sense.
I would just offer some perspective, and I think something that sort of kept me reassured is just progress. And the reality is that if you embrace the idea that you're going to spend your life learning and growing, then not being where you want to be at any point in time shouldn't be an issue, especially if you can look back and see how far you've come. And I'm sure for all of you in this room, looking back over the last couple of years, the growth that you've achieved and the things that you've done will reassure you that at any point in time in your life, you can look back and see how far you've come. So just know that growth will always be the case, and have a lifelong love of learning. And I hope that will keep you going and reassure you when you need to be reassured.
Something that's kind of been a challenge for me, and that I've been thinking about, is kind of wanting to make the biggest impact that I can, and want to make the biggest difference as far as choosing a career path. But it seems like I want to do something that has all this power and all this whatever, but it seems like more practically the smaller scale things have the most impact. How, you guys sitting in these seats making the decisions that you did, how did you make the decisions thinking about trying to make a difference or trying to make an impact? And how have you seen that?
I think, so this is obviously a very motivated group here, and I suspect a lot of you want to have a big impact in your career, and I think that would resonate with a lot of people on this panel as well. So Quizlet actually takes Morehead-Cain scholars as interns every year, and oftentimes when I have my first conversation with a prospective intern, I say, okay, first I said, this isn't an interview for Quizlet. First I'm going to wear my Morehead-Cain alumni hat. What are you excited about? And you don't have to say education software. Like, what are you really excited about? If it's journalism, tell me. If it's international affairs, tell me. Whatever it is, tell me, and let's see how we can get you on that path. And if it is education software, great. Or if that's number 2, great. And we'll get you at Quizlet and try to see if we can get a great internship experience there. But the reason I really want to find out what the passion is because if you're really going 110% towards something you're really excited about and you're really passionate about, there's a much better possibility, a much better chance that you're going to be the best at it and that you're going to have a much larger impact at it. And so there's so many different ways you can have an impact in this world, at a community level, at large scale. There's so many different ways. But if you're really going for something that you really care about, there's just so much of a better chance that you're going to be the best at it. And so I think really, really exploring while you're at Carolina, what are you passionate about and going for it, and just assuming that knowing that it's going to work out, I think is the best way to go for that impact. And then as you go, kind of as Larry's talking about, leverage the network, leverage your friends, leverage the academic resources, and keep building on that, and kind of keep your eyes on the prize. Keep going for it.
To take that a step further, one thing that I would say, because I was going to say play to your strengths, which I think is very much sort of the same idea. I think that a lot of people focus on industry, but especially sort of from a business perspective, every industry, whether it's real estate or consumer products or whatever, has different functions. And so I would urge you to not only think about which industry and which content you're passionate about, but to think about which functional competencies are your strengths. And so you might be an analytical person, you might be an influencer, you might be a counselor, right? Really try to understand those functional competencies and align yourself with opportunities for which those functional competencies are important for success. I think that's really overlooked, and something that I know was an insight that I took from school, really business school specifically, that was very helpful in my career.
Yep.
I just wanted to add that I think if you let curiosity kind of be your guide, that also kind of will guide you to kind of what you're interested in, what your passions are. And I think that will kind of guide you throughout your career. I had someone tell me that, a mentor at NBC, that you let curiosity just guide you throughout your career, and that will lead you to where you need to be.
So my more of a lighthearted question, just about your experience in Carolina. What's your favorite memory here? Academic, extracurricular, social, or otherwise? Is there one moment that stands out about your experience?
My college roommate is in the back there and just sent me there's a lot. Oh God.
Halloween.
Basketball, yeah.
Freshman
National
year.
Championship. Honestly, one of there's too many to count, but one of actually my recent ones is a year or two ago coming back to visit, and myself and a couple of other friends who were roommates who all lived together went into the Kenan Stadium, and there was nobody there, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and we just sat in the bleachers or on the seats for an hour or two and just were laughing and laughing and laughing and just reiterating all of the crazy, fun, hilarious memories that you make here. At the end of the day, you're at college, so you surround yourself with people that absolutely excite you and make you want to grow and make you be better, but you also absolutely find a family here. So whatever it was between the Halloween nights or the late nights on Franklin Street or whatever adventures you might be going on, I think the best part was the kind of friends and family that you create while you're here?
I would say same. I mean, basketball as well. I mean, we would camp. I mean, people still camp out. I don't know if they still do that anymore. Do they still camp out? I don't know. Camping out for tickets. I was still here when Dean Smith was still here, like the first 2 years. So being at the Dean Dome when Dean Smith was here, and then Halloween is amazing. I'm still trying to recreate those Halloween experiences. Even now.
You can come back.
I can come back. I can come back. Halloween is amazing. Chapel Hill.
I don't have a good answer. I mean, the Duke UNC game my senior year was the best single sporting event I've still ever been to. We were down 9 with 2 minutes 47 seconds left. We came back and won in regulation. I still watch the last 3 minutes of that game on YouTube before every Duke UNC game every year. Honest to God, I get like a little teary-eyed, and I'm like, I'm too old for this. Stop it! You've been away from Carolina this long. Don't get emotional. But it's that was amazing. I mean, one thing I'll say, this wasn't at Carolina, but the people in Carolina, the Carolina community, the culture here, it's just special. And I'm totally biased. I mean, it'd be crazy to say I'm not, because I went here. But you know, I've spent, since I left here, I've lived in China and California, so pretty far away from North Carolina. And I've had great Carolina communities in both places. And both communities have just had all these great, warm, wonderful, friendly people who are so happy and doing interesting things, and have added so much to my life. And I think there's something to be said for spending 4 formative years of your life from age 18 to 22 in this just amazing community of people who are so happy to be here and smart and engaged in the world, and then carry that community with you. It's pretty unique and special. And so I definitely, you know, that's when I think about why I love this place so much, I definitely take that with me, and it kind of takes all these individual memories and kind of blurs them together.
For me, Halloween freshman year was crazy. I lived in South Campus, on South Campus in Morrison, super fond memories. And my brother actually went to school with me. I mean, he was 2 years older. And he was an RA on South Campus, which was awesome. So just fond memories of really sort of freshman year, sophomore year, for sure.
I think it'd be really hard to choose one memory because there were so many extraordinary ones. But I would just say some of you may be local, you may be from Chapel Hill, you may have kind of grown up in this area, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are from out of state or even from other countries. And as someone who, when they came here and was sitting in your seats 13 years ago, had never been to Chapel Hill before, there's something really special about this place, and it's really hard to put your finger on it, but it kind of grows and it gets under your skin. And even a decade after leaving, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it still is kind of my favorite place in the world. And when I get to come back here, I get so excited. I'm like a little kid. There's something about the relationships you build here, the opportunities this place offers, if you're willing to go and grab them, that is very unique. And I'm very excited for you all to hopefully be able to experience that too.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think in the weekend that you have, take the time, walk campus. You know, we spent 4 years here pursuing a number of things and working and late nights and challenging ourselves. But sometimes the best moments were those moments of pause when you're gathered with a group of people, just sitting in the middle of campus, watching the sun go down, just catching up on everything. I think those moments really stick in my head.
All right. Yes.
A company might have already hinted at this, so this question is a little bit. But what were some of the ways that the Morehead-Cain program has helped you in ways that you didn't really foresee and when you were in Marshall?
I'm not sure it helped me in ways that I didn't foresee. I think it delivered on the promise, which was support in pursuing my interests, my dreams. You know, I did things 30 days in the Alaskan wilderness. You know, I spent the summer in southern India volunteering at an orphanage. I spent my private enterprise working for TSN, which is essentially the ESPN of Canada, working late nights broadcasting the 2002 FIFA World Cup. And I spent, you know, my travel study studying revolutions in Latin America. and sort of how they impacted people. I think it just gave me an enormous boost, and it delivered on that promise.
I could just say that, echoing what Larry was saying earlier, I think when you're sort of 18, 19 and you're just about to start college, you're probably not looking much further than your freshman year, and certainly I wasn't. I think maybe the thing that I've been surprised, or most surprised about, is the friendships that I created while I was here with other Morehead-Cains and how they've lasted, but also the amazing help that being a Morehead-Cain has given me since graduating. I can only talk from personal experience, but I got my first job through a Morehead. I'm still very close to James Dean, who ran the British side of the program for many years. He's been a mentor and a friend to me for many, many years. And it just feels like the Morehead-Cain scholarship is always willing to go above and beyond, and that's been extraordinary to witness.
I think I started my remarks with all the times that I called Chuck, so those were all post-graduation. You know, if this was a room of sort of, like matriculating college students that were not the Morehead, the biggest advice I would have for you is to build a resume in college, so that, because the kids that have like 3 or 4, even 2 or 3 like really high quality internships end up having such a stronger trajectory when they graduate. But I don't have to say that in a room of Moreheads, right? Like, you're gonna have international experience on your resume if you choose, right? You'll have like super interesting things to talk about. And I know that for me, obviously, leveraging a warm connect that Chuck offered was helpful, but I had 12 interviews that summer that I, answered Jim Wilmot's call and went over to Morgan Stanley. And people were so impressed. I had Peru and Zimbabwe and Puerto Rico on my resume as a 21-year-old. And so that is just so hugely powerful, and it continues to pay for itself over time.
Okay, so here's what I think we'll do. We're going to take one more question, because I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for you all to maybe spread around the room and have people come up and chat with you a little more informally. Okay, so one more question. Yes.
So this is a question kind of on your experience during Chapel Hill. What was your favorite summer enrichment activity?
They all were excellent and very different, but before my senior year, I worked as a script consultant for a Broadway producer in New York City, and that was really, really fascinating. And starting out, it kind of felt like a scene in The Devil Wears Prada, where everyone just seemed so fancy and all of these crazy things are happening all around me. And just to kind of have the privilege to put your toe in a world and kind of try it on for size, and see, and just to kind of explore it so thoroughly, and that was absolutely fascinating.
For me, my travel study summer, I went to Africa, and I went to South Africa and Ghana and studied dance. And I have this favorite memory where I was learning dance from someone from the National Dance Company of Ghana, but they were kind of out of session, so one of the dancers was teaching me in like the yard of like where I was staying. And so this little boy was watching me, and I was thinking I was doing a good job, and he's just laughing. He's laughing the whole time. This is so funny, but I came from this like from the western part of the world, and I thought I was doing it right. It was very interesting. It was a very humbling experience. But that whole summer was amazing. Learning dance in a different culture and being exposed to all of that.
So just real quickly, what my 4 summers were, I did backpacking in Montana, taught English in China, law firm in London, doing international trade, and then research travel in Western China, far Western China, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, looking at that's kind of rest of region, looking at minority, majority policies there. And kind of to the question of unexpected benefits of the program, that last summer was so interesting and so much fun. I never told the foundation this, but one of the, I brought another Carolina classmate with me on that experience, and he was getting school credit through the journalism school, and his professor who was from China knew about that region, thought it was too dangerous, so didn't approve the program. So didn't tell Chuck that. They approved it. But it was just an amazing, fascinating experience. And when I went to apply for my job in the State Department, this was just a niche policy area. I didn't think they would care about it. I didn't think it'd be, it would get me a job anywhere. It was just because I was interested in it. And it turns out that the person who had just left, who I was replacing for the job, had the Xinjiang portfolio. And so they were looking for someone with some expertise in this area. So it ended up getting me a job too. So great summer experience, and it was a benefit to my career as well.
So just to run through my experiences, I did an outdoor leadership experience in the Rockies in Colorado. Then I went to Hong Kong to basically teach in an English immersion course, and then I went to Puerto Rico to work for their first economic development think tank, and then did the nonprofit lending sort of split experience, and then microfinance in Cusco. I mean, like, really, which one is my favorite? They're all amazing experiences. I don't mean to be the waiter at the restaurant that's like, they're all amazing, but they really are.
I'll choose it. I wonder if anyone else had this on the Outward Bound, the silent retreat.
Yes.
Did anyone else have
Yes,
this?
yes.
So I didn't know this was going to happen. So I went on the Outward Bound, which was amazing. And then like halfway through, I was there for about 2 weeks, something like that, 3 weeks maybe. And halfway through, in the middle of the night, they came and woke us up and took us. I was in this coastal area, put us on this boat and drove us to this island and dropped us off in various like parts of the island, and they were all sort of demarcated, so we weren't allowed to see anyone else. And they basically said, goodbye, we'll see you in like 3 days' time. And they just like left us. And I think for 3 days, I had like 3 carrots, 3 apples, and like a bag of nuts or something. And we were just we weren't allowed a watch, or none of us had mobiles back then, cell phones. I think we were given like an empty pad of paper and a pen, and we were just supposed to kind of think for 3 days. It was. I mean, now you pay a lot of money on like meditation retreats to do this. It was amazing, and something that I've never done since, but it was very much like it.
I think I napped through my entire solo day. I think for me it was probably the summer I spent working up in Canada with TSN. The World Cup that year was in 2002. Was in Japan and South Korea. So I'd show up to work at 10:30 p.m. We would edit the pregame show. I'd do research for the analysts, and I'd work until probably 10, 11, or 12. And World Cup, for those of you who don't know, it's basically nonstop for 30 days. So you don't really have days off. So I think it just made me realize if I'm passionate about this and I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to work all night, and I'm willing to do it no matter what, and it doesn't feel like work, this is what I want to do. All the summers were incredible, but I think that one, cemented what I want to do with my career.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause.